There appeared a story in the Chicago Daily News based on an article in Nation's Business by Associate Professor Lawrence L. Steinmetz, which pointed up the fact that often the best thing that can happen to a person is to be fired from his job. As one executive put it, getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. I feel like thanking the guy who did it. And he was typical of a group of fired managers who told Professor Steinmetz of the University of Colorado that they are happier, better off financially, and better adjusted for having been canned. The school survey revealed that 70% of those fired now rate their relationship with their new bosses high. 70% also said relations with their former bosses had been low. Now, nearly all of them said they felt better off for changing jobs, and the rest said they were at least as well off. 55% said the job change caused no problems at home, and 1/3 said their home life was better. Almost 2/3 of those polled said they got more enjoyment from their new jobs, and significantly, 87% said salary was the most important aspect of any job, rather than job security. Firing a man who does not fit into the job you've hired him for can be, and in fact almost always is, the kindest thing you can do for him. Forgetting all about getting the kind of job you want done for the company and finding the right man for that job, keeping a man in a job he's not doing well is to keep a man unhappy and frustrated, and keep him from finding the job that's right for his talents and abilities. But most companies will go to almost any length before letting an unsatisfactory employee go. Management will procrastinate, vacillate, and sit on the fence sometimes for years before facing the inevitable. In the meantime, everybody suffers. A man in the wrong job might not get up the nerve to quit because of any old port in a storm philosophy. Since he's busy working at a job for which he's ill-fitted, he has no time to look for more rewarding and more satisfying work. He knows he's unhappy in his present work, that he's not doing the job that's expected of him. He's often nervous, irritable, and depressed. And since none of us likes to blame himself, he will often blame his company or his superiors or those in his charge for his problems on the job. When actually no one is to blame except his superiors for not facing the fact that they've got a round peg in a square hole. I remember reading of a survey in which a group of very successful men were questioned as to their past jobs. Even though most of them had never thought much about it before, they had to admit that they owed their present success to the jobs they had lost in the past. Whether they had resigned or been fired made no difference. Everybody gets unhappy with his work from time to time. Now, that's natural. But if a person has been unhappy with his work for an extended period and knows deep down that he's in the wrong job, he should get out of it. The deep-rooted fear of being fired goes back to the old days when jobs were few and far between and when any job was felt to be a matter of survival. Times have changed. Unfortunately, the feelings of management have, as a rule, not changed. There's a wonderful balancing mechanism in the world that operates to protect and make available great opportunities for the underdog. It works with countries, businesses of all kinds, and people in every walks of life. This is because of the fact that as a country, business firm, or person becomes successful and affluent, there is a tendency to relax and to take success for granted. This accounts for upsets in sporting contests of all kinds. It's what makes a small, virtually unknown company or nation move up into the front rank, or spells the difference between a person's being average or great. It all hinges on quality of product or performance. Now, some time back, Raymond Loewy, the famous industrial designer, wrote something for This Week magazine that will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. He wrote, "Quality control is a modern industrial concept which requires that every product be checked against established standards to make sure that nothing defective reaches you, the consumer. But the principles of quality control have much broader uses. I believe that nothing great has ever been achieved, whether by a nation, a business, or an individual, without quality. People will turn to you, follow you, support you only as long as they are confident that you are doing your best. Now we're at a point where that belief is being put to the test. This country and its people are in a massive race to maintain our leadership against other nations in trade, training, goods, and taste. This is a fight which cannot be won for us by some remote, heroic spaceman. It comes right home to every office, factory, and workshop. It's a fight measured more in actions than in words, and one where our country loses a little each time any one of us lets his standards fall. This fight is lost in little ways, by faucets that leak, windows that rattle, windshield wipers that don't wipe, lights that flicker or don't last, zippers that jam, engines that smoke, containers that leak, colors that fade, salespersons who are rude, repairmen who are untrustworthy, artists and artisans who do their second best, Designers and manufacturers who think it doesn't matter just this once if they turn out products which are vulgar, shoddy, and overpriced. Mr. Lowy is right, as each of us knows. But as I mentioned earlier, there is a balancing mechanism that works to reduce quality almost in proportion to success and affluence. And if this tendency is to be overcome, it can be done only by constant attention and stress on quality control and by the relentless training and retraining of the people responsible for production and quality control. With success comes the tendency to relax and take things for granted. And that's about the time that the team nobody thought could possibly win pins your ears back for you. People are going to buy the best product for the money, and they don't care where it was manufactured, which is as it should be. And we could lose our affluence to competing countries if we relax our individual efforts. The sloppy worker is the unhappy worker. There is no joy that surpasses that which comes from the knowledge of work well done, a fine service rendered, or the turning out of an excellent product. Here are some interesting questions for you. You might want to try answering them. 1. If you could completely change places with any other person in the world, would you do it? And who would that person be? 2. If you could work at any job you could choose, would that work be different from the work you're now doing? 3. If you could live in any part of the country you want to live in, would you move from where you're now living? 4. If you could go back to, say, age 12 and live your life from that point over again, would you do it? Studies indicate that the great majority of people, even though they evince a certain amount of dissatisfaction with their present lives and don't seem to be as happy as they might be, will answer no to all 4 questions. They might at first say they'd like to change places with another person, but when pinned down to identify the person, draw a blank. The thought of sacrificing all their friends and loved ones and giving up what they might have becomes too overwhelming. As far as changing their work, most people will admit they are dissatisfied at their work, about 85% according to the research team in Princeton, New Jersey. But if they were actually asked to leave and seek something else, would stick to that that's familiar. As far as living in some other part of the country, if the answer is yes here, it is usually a part of the country with which they are not really intimately familiar, but which sounds romantic or has a better climate. If they really wanted to live there, they'd move. And the thought of going back to age 12 fills most people with a dread bordering on horror. They wouldn't do it for anything. The upshot of the whole thing is that most people are living lives that they themselves have fashioned and have or are getting what they really want, or at least what they're willing to settle for. And when this is brought to their attention, they often begin to get a lot more enjoyment from the life they've got. They begin to enjoy themselves more and realize that things aren't so bad after all. They also begin to look at each other, their marriage partners, and their children in a new light. As one man put it, it had never occurred to me before that my wife had, by marrying me, dedicated her entire life to me, our home, and our children. This is an enormous commitment, a total commitment, and I realized I'd been treating her far too casually, that I'd been taking too great a gift for granted. We talked it over and got on much better, much warmer terms with each other. I guess it all goes to prove that a reassessment of ourselves and our lives is a good idea from time to time. It makes us realize how much more we can do with the lives and circumstances we've got, how we can improve upon them and embellish them with a little thought and creativity. I found it interesting. It's been written that life is divided into 3 terms, that which was, which is, and which will be. Let us learn from the past to profit by the present, and from the present to live better for the future. The body operates best, it seems, when there is a great deal to do, when we're challenged, when there's a goal involved. Take these things away, and apathy and introspection set in. We're turned in upon ourselves, and we can usually find something to be sick about, sick physically or miserable and sick emotionally. Moreover, we're at our most cheerful when we're busily engaged in something that needs to be done. And the times to watch out for and plan and prepare for are those times just following the completion of an important event. People are let down, at odds with themselves, and often terribly depressed just following the completion of something they've worked and planned for a long time. For no good reason they can think of, people who have just completed a big job, no matter how successful it may be, often fall into the deepest depressions. I'm reminded of the story of Thomas Hagen, who wrote the play Mr. Roberts, one of the most successful shows ever to be produced on Broadway. He was only 28 years old, attractive, healthy, talented, rich. The play was earning him about $9,000 a week in royalties. Yet he was found dead, a suicide, in his duplex penthouse apartment. Now, this may be an extreme case and a long way removed from the inexplicable depression suffered by a young mother following the birth of a child she's looked forward to for so long, but it remains a fact that when a person finishes a big job, he soon needs another. This is why successful writers keep turning out more books, and why the daily work of most people is much more important to their well-being than they may realize. So when you have to drag yourself out of bed on a cold, gray, rainy morning or tackle the laundry or the dishes, if you can't be grateful, which you should be, at least recognize that it's probably keeping you healthy. There's an old Arabian proverb that goes, "He who has health has hope, and he who has hope has everything." And someone said, "Turn to your work as though your life depends upon it, for perhaps it does." Surveys have shown that most women get married between the ages of 19 and 21, 19.5 to 20.5 to be exact. Most of them think of marriage as something that will take the place of a money-making job. Somehow these giddy girls are failing to get the word. Statistics show that if a woman has both a husband and children, she will work for a paycheck for 25 years. If she has a husband and no children, she will work for a paycheck for 29 years. And if she, for any one or more of many good reasons, remains unmarried, she will work, as does a man, for 40 years. Statistics also point out that the great majority of females reaching the age of 19 or 20 are decidedly ill-prepared for anything other than non-skilled jobs. They're not prepared for non-skilled jobs either, but that's what they wind up doing because they lack the necessary training and education to do anything else. To the best of my knowledge, hardly anyone, parent or educator, tells a girl when she is 12 or 15 that no matter whether she marries or not, she will in all probability have to work for a minimum of 25 years, and that since she will have to compete in the world of working people, it's decidedly to her best interest to prepare for a job that she'll find interesting, and which will provide her with a good, if not excellent, income. Most love stories have traditionally ended with the young, starry-eyed couple, their early problems overcome, getting married. That is, most fiction ends where the real story actually begins. And here we find our young woman usually totally lacking in marketable skills and with only the rudiments of a general education, with 3/4 of her life still ahead of her, starting out in marriage. She's one of the world's best examples that people would still rather learn through trial and error than from the experience of others. For her, marriage was her goal, often her total goal. Get married and join the club. Okay, now what? A study made by Michigan State University turned up the fact that married men are happier than married women. It also turned up the rather interesting information that single women are happier than married women. Oddly enough, and contrary to popular opinion, bachelors are the least happy people. And in my opinion, one of the main reasons why married men and single women are happier than married women is because both are still actively caught up with the world. They're busy, productive people as a rule. This is not to say that wives are not busy, nor productive. They are. They're the hardest working people in the world. But they often find their lives boring and unchallenging after a while, and this is because they stop learning too soon. They still have ample time to prepare themselves for rewarding and stimulating work, but few do. Most take the line of least resistance and settle back into a kind of apathy and watch the world go rushing by outside their windows. And when the day comes that they want to or have to start looking for work, they have a problem. Whether she needs to or wants to work or not, every girl should train for a career of her choice. It will bring interest and independence to her. It's also a great way to meet the right sort of man. The international affairs analyst Herman Kahn, he's also a physicist, mathematician, and Defense Department nuclear strategist, made a forecast a while back which predicts a rosy, cheerful finale to the remainder of the 20th century. He predicts that for most of the world's teeming multitude, some 6 billion people by the year 2000, the last third of this century will be peaceful and increasingly prosperous. For our part of the world, the picture Kahn paints borders on the idyllic. He says that we will have entered a post-industrial phase of such easy street affluence that many citizens may decide they don't have to work anymore at all. The big change from the gloom of the 1950s to the present optimism is that chances for a major thermonuclear war are now low. In the 1950s, he feels the probability was high. The world was lucky not to have had an all-out nuclear war, he says. For this country, Kahn sees nothing but wine and roses all the way. By the year 2000, that's close now, Kahn sees the disposable income per household reaching $25,000 a year. It'll beat that. But according to the story in Business Week magazine, there'll be some traffic jams. 1/4 of the total U.S. population will be living in Boswash. That's the Boston-Washington urban complex. 1/8 in Chippits. That's Chicago-Pittsburgh complex. 1/16 in San. That's Santa Barbara, San Diego. He forgot the peninsula of Florida, which will be probably the 4th largest. As our affluence snowballs, there will be more job dropouts. That is, people who simply quit working and hobbyists who will work 2 or 3 months a year in order to pursue some avocation the rest of the year. But Kahn expects most of us to keep plugging away to pay for more of the good things of life. All this could lead to what Kahn views as a wholesome decadence, if you can imagine such a thing. The biggest problem for the U.S. and Canada and other leading nations in the last third of the century will be the search for meaning and purpose, for an answer to the question, what's it all about? It's wonderful to think of a completely affluent society with poverty and much of disease a thing of the past, but affluence will bring with it new problems, new challenges, some of them as far-reaching as any we've ever known. And I think Herman Kahn is right when he says the biggest problem in the last third of the century will be the search for meaning and purpose, for an answer to the question, what's it all about? I think this is what's bothering so many young people today. Living as they do in an affluent society with all their basic needs met, they've had to turn to other questions and seek other answers. And this trend will doubtless continue and grow more widespread as we move toward the end of the 20th century. Man must seek answers to problems. Remove one set of problems and he'll turn to a new set. And if the day should ever come that he runs out of problems, he's going to be in a worse fix than he is today. In Kenneth Good's book, It's Easier to Win, he writes, artists like to decorate public libraries with mural paintings of mankind struggling upwards in flame-like yearnings toward nobler things. The struggle, as a matter of fact, has been mostly in the other direction. Mankind in 1,000,000 years or so of evolution has fought savagely against progress. He's right there, you know. In fact, history proves that attempting to lever mankind up a notch or two out of his stagnant hog wallow was one of the best ways ever devised to get yourself ridiculed, stoned, locked up, tortured, drawn and quartered, or crucified. Civilization has been administered in the mass, much in the manner of a mother scrubbing her boy's neck and ears, and has been received as reluctantly. Modern man, all the billions of him, may owe all his culture and most of his comfort to the imagination, determination, and energy of just a few thousand individuals. Comparatively few of these are embalmed in biography, autobiography, and history. Fortunately, these few did, in passing, store up a set of rules reliable enough to make success fairly certain for those willing to follow in their footsteps. Furthermore, unfortunately, the struggle to win these days is easier. The world is larger to beat, of course. On the other hand, through this comforting sense of size, society comes gradually to be tolerant of even first-rate achievement. So if you're interested in making a first-class effort to win a temperately chosen goal, here are Kenneth Good's 7 steps to winning. 1. Focus the goal. Bullseye all immediate objectives into a single goal. 2. Project the direct line. Survey the straightest, simplest way for you to reach that single goal. 3. Fix a definite date for arrival. 4. Schedule a program for daily delivery of achievement which, rigidly kept, will bring you to your goal by that fixed date. 5. Control your rate of progress by regular comparison with the prearranged schedule. So, like the railroad conductor, you'll always know whether you are on time. 6. Deliver from within, by physical and emotional self-operation, the greatest power your person is capable of producing. 7. Reduce, by studiously advantageous presentation of your project, resistance from without. Anyone willing to do these 7 things and capable of doing them effectively enough to count is virtually guaranteed winning at any undertaking. Keep in mind, too, that you have very little competition in today's world. The overwhelming majority of people are quite content to go along as usual, operating on from 5 to 15% of their real capacity and realizing for their efforts 5 to 15% of what they might well be realizing. Another book you might want to add to your collection is by the anthropologist and social critic Dr. Ashley Montagu, entitled The American Way of Life. In it, he comments on many aspects of life in America, one of which happens to be the pursuit of happiness, and he writes that the pursuit of happiness in America is perhaps the most misconceived of human endeavors. Life and liberty are indeed necessities, but the pursuit of happiness is a fool's game, a will-o'-the-wisp that eludes all who believe that by making it a goal they can, by the prescribed or some other means, achieve it. The truth is, and it's not a sad truth, that happiness cannot be pursued and caught like a butterfly in a collector's net. It defies pursuit, and all attempts to contain it are vain. Nor can it be purchased. It is one of the many things that money cannot buy. The truth is that it is not the purpose of life, of a human being's life, to be happy. Perhaps this is a shocking statement to those who have been conditioned to feel otherwise, but it's nonetheless true for all that. If true, then millions of human beings have misspent and are misspending their lives. What is happiness? The answer to that question is not a matter of definition, but rather what most people mean by happiness. What is it that they desire for themselves and for others when they think of happiness? Apart from the obvious requirements of health, money, an attractive spouse, gratifying children, a beautiful abode, esteem, prestige, recognition, wit, wisdom, valor, love, and the attainment of whatever one has set one's heart on, what other ingredients should go into this cake? Possibly a good many others, but this will be according to each person's fancy. My own view, he writes, is that not one of these conditions is either a necessary or a sufficient condition of happiness, although one or all of them together may give some people a feeling of whatever they consider happiness to be. But such a feeling soon loses its power to please, as, in time, one returns to the steadying level of everyday life. I believe with Aristotle that the steadiest and most enduring states of which human beings are capable are states that are characterized by an absence of pain, physical pain and mental pain. Such states of the positive absence of pain are appreciated for the most part only when they're interrupted, as by the experience of illness or a bereavement. It is in the state when one is least conscious of oneself that one is likely to be at one's happiest. What folly it is to believe otherwise. To believe that those occasional peak experiences, those thrilling moments when the goal one has set oneself has been achieved, or it just feels good to be alive, or one receives an unexpected windfall, or one's work is highly praised, are likely to be numerous and prolonged, is silly. Such occasions are indeed memorable, but the feelings of euphoria they engender do not endure, nor should they. The moments of happiness we enjoy take us by surprise, but seize us. It's not so much the pursuit of happiness as the happiness of that is most likely to yield the desired gratifications, and then only occasionally. It is work that one delights in, that is the surest guarantor of happiness. Someone sent me a magazine article titled "Success, Sweet Success." Unfortunately, the name of the magazine and the author are missing, but I found it to be very good. It goes, "Success, sweet success. Everyone wants it. Everyone achieves it in some measure. Few seem to get enough of it. Some don't know they have it. Others forget what they're really striving for and why sometimes it's necessary to try to define success for ourselves. What is this thing called success? Is it complete achievement of our grandest goals born out of honesty, industriousness, and thrift as depicted in Horatio Alger's stories? Or is it a contrary illusion, always tempting but never attainable? Does fate give it to some on a golden platter and deny it to others in spite of all efforts? Who, for example, do we consider most successful? An expert mechanic or the president of a company? An accomplished teacher or an affluent financier? The man who gets an excellent job done quietly or the one who performs equally well under the limelight? Being perfectly honest, don't we identify success with fame and fortune? Even in church, don't we give the nod to the brilliant leader and ignore the quiet man in the back pew? Isn't this a serious mistake? If we're to identify success with the badge of fame or the accumulation of wealth, where do all the solid successes of modest individuals fit in? Few of us can wear a success badge or a conspicuous price tag. How then can we recognize our true importance to our family, our company, and our community? Wanting success but lacking its fleet, appreciate our solid contributions. The answers are personal, and self-appreciation of our own successes comes only when we live up to our talents and goals the best way we can. Real success consists of using our talents to the utmost, and when this is done, we need no badge or price tag. Crawford Greenewalt has said, "Unfortunately, we take life at its most superficial and conclude that achievement can be measured only in terms of applause or wolf whistles or financial compensation. But if in the years to come we can look ourselves in the eye and say with complete honesty that we've used to the utmost the talents with which we have been endowed, then we'll be successful men and women, quite regardless of the stature we have in the eyes of the world." We need to remember, too, that there is no significant success without corresponding failures. The difference is that successful people learn from their mistakes and refuse to quit trying because of them. Mark Sullivan came about as close as anyone ever has to the key for success when he said, "To find a career to which you are adapted by nature and then to work hard at it is about as near to a formula for success and happiness as the world provides." Add to Sullivan's statement a conviction of Thomas Wolfe when he wrote, "If a man has a talent and cannot use it, he has failed. If he has a talent and uses only half of it, he has partly failed. If he has a talent and learns somehow to use all of it, he has gloriously succeeded and won a satisfaction and a triumph few men ever know." Success depends on knowing our talents and our ability to use them to the fullest. For those who can do this, success is theirs. Thank you.